CSS selector, it is not possible for you to style HTML elements without using selectors. So the selectors are the one that can be able to specify which path or which particular element do you want to style. Now in this particular case, they are saying that a selector basically is used to select the HTML element you want to style. So that is what a selector is. Then is used to find the HTML element you want to style. So sometimes you work with a wide web page and it becomes difficult for you to be able to find some of these elements. So with selectors enable you to find these elements with ease. Now there are various types of CSS selectors. So the first one is what you call the element selector. So it targets all elements with the same name. So in this particular example down here, you can be able to see we have got an external CSS file, but down here in the body section, you realize that we have got two heading 2 elements. So the first one has the content like CSS is an easy language, but the second one is that it is having CSS is let me say it's a complex language, right? Maybe let's write that content there so that you can both understand. Now we can say that CSS is an easy language in heading 2, and then we have CSS is a complex language in heading 2 again. So these are similar elements, HTML elements, and therefore when you are going to style them, they are going to have the same appearance. Now you can see in my external file CSS external file, you realize that H2 is having the background of blue. So it means that when I run this particular code, you realize that both of these headings will have the same color, which is blue. Now, when you go further, we have the second type of the selector. We call it a class selector. A class selector basically means that can we be able to group some of the elements in HTML that will be styled the same. So basically class is like grouping of elements that will be styled in the same way. Now the syntax for this, you need to start with a dot, and then there is no space between the dot and the selector or the name of the class name. So you need to put a dot and then the class name and then the opening curly bracket and then the property, the values that you want. You can name a number of them depending with what you want to do with that particular group of elements. And then after that, you need to close either with a curly bracket. It is also recommended that in front there you need to put a semicolon so that you can terminate each and every attribute or each and every styling that you apply in those elements. So in this particular case, you realize that a class is an attribute that can be added to any HTML element. It groups element into a class which we can apply the same styling. Now down here you can be able to see an example whereby we are having in the body section, we are having H2, which is having the class red text, and then this is the content for that heading 2. This is the content, red is the content. Now down here we have got also heading 2, and then the content is green. So what is going to happen in this case, that this particular styling is going to be applied in both of these, because both of these elements are within the same class. That is to say that these particular headings are going to be red. All of them are going to be red in color. So that is how you apply the class selector. Then when you come to different elements with the same class, you can also have different elements in your HTML, but they are using the same class. For example, in this particular example here, we have got two elements that have the same class. We have heading 2, which is using the class red text. Then we have also the paragraph, which is also using the red text. So in this particular case, you realize that there are two different elements but using the same class. So it means that these particular two elements are going to be styled in the same way using the red color. So the background for these two elements are going to have a background of a red color. Now down here we go to the next one. We have what you call the ID selector. An ID selector, basically it is used to style specific elements. So this one is mainly used when you want to have some kind of uniqueness in some kind of HTML elements. Some HTML elements need some unique styling. That's why you need to have the ID selector. So in this particular case, we have the syntax for the ID selector. We have got a pound or an hashtag followed by an ID name, and then the property and then the values down there. What is the difference between an ID and a class? The only difference between the two is that with an ID, it is applied to only one element. But when you talk about a class, it's going to be applied in multiple elements. As you can see down here, we are having an ID which is called name, and then we have got other same HTML elements but do not have the ID. So by doing this, it means that only this particular styling of color, it is going to be applied in the first heading too, but the rest of the headings will not be tampered with. It will have its own styling. Now going down here, we have number 4, which is attribute selector. With attribute selector, it means that we are going to style HTML elements using their attributes. So here we have the syntax. You need always to start with the attribute or the HTML element, followed by the attribute that will enable us to identify that particular element, and then the property and the values inside the curly brackets. An example of this, you can see here we have got a paragraph called draggable, which is equal to true, and then drag me is the content of that particular paragraph, then followed by the second paragraph, which is called draggable, but in this particular case it is false, so don't drag me. So in this particular case, when you go to our external CSS file, you realize that when you have draggable is equal to true, when it is seen, when this particular attribute is seen in the CSS file, it means that this particular this particular paragraph, it is going to be in red color, because this is the attribute for that particular paragraph. That's why it will be in red color. Then when you go to say that select all P elements with draggable attribute, so that I've already explained that attributes that you put inside this square bracket, it is the one that is going to determine the styling of different elements in the HTML document. The last one is what you call the universal selector. A universal selector means that apply this styling to all the elements in your web page. And how do you do that? You use the asterisk, then the opening curly bracket, and then you put the property and the value inside there, and then you close the curly bracket. So those are what we call the CSS selector.